I know it's been a long time coming. We've been trying to schedule this thing for a few months now. The COVID bug hit you, but we finally got you.
Yeah, God willing. Thank goodness.
Yeah. It's funny, like the COVID thing, it's like this timestamp that's going to be in our history. Like, I think, we're going to get through this thing here soon. And it's almost like you ever see those, like the rings on trees where, you can like cut down a tree and like, someone like an arborist or someone can go to it and be like, oh yeah, this was a year of drought. This was a year of flood. And it's like, we're going to like timestamp things, and anything between like 2019 and like 22, you're going to be like, oh yeah, that was clearly like those years because of, all the Zoom meetings that occurred or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I hope that it is timestamped and then, 2022 or 2023, and then it's over. But I guess that remains to be seen.
That remains to be seen. So, maybe take a second and tell us a little bit about you, your background. You have an amazing background. Dive into it, but give me the 10,000 view overview.
Of course. So, name is Edwin Draughan. Born and raised here in Southern California. Ended up going undergrad at Yale University, where I played basketball for all 4 years. After graduation, I tried to make the NBA, had a couple of tryouts, summer league, training camps, etc. Didn't quite latch on. And instead of going the what is now called the G League, the D League route, I ended up going overseas. So I played all in all 9 years throughout Europe, primarily in Switzerland, but also a stop in Hungary, a couple years in France, a short time in Belgium. So I was all throughout Europe. And while I was over there, I noticed that there was a significant need for other athletes like myself. And I founded a small wealth management firm whose goal was to kind of assist other athletes like myself, kind of manage their money, increase their financial literacy, just give them a resource so that they feel much more comfortable with the capital or the money that they were bringing in. So I was doing that while I was playing basketball. After I finished my basketball career, I came back stateside and tried to figure out what I wanted to do. I was actually continuing on with my wealth management firm for a year or so, got married, kind of made the decision that I wanted to pivot more into kind of the business side of sports. I thought that the best way for me to do so was to get my MBA. So I went to USC, earned my MBA, and found a great home during my time at USC at a boutique investment bank called Park Lane, where, we do a lot of work in the sports space. So now I'm helping people, buy and sell teams and value teams, et cetera. It's just, kind of looking back on is interesting, kind of my progression. I was an athlete, then I was working with athletes. Now I'm working with, the team. So, who knows what's next?
It's like dream job, right? Athlete, I'm sure all through your life, you don't get to the college level without, having been serious about sports. Coming out, playing professional basketball. I know you had the dream, the NBA, but, it's still amazingly high caliber of basketball in Europe. And I know you had a lot of success there. And then to be able to get into a profession now where you're working with, professional sports franchises, that's, you couldn't have drawn it up any better.
I mean, it's incredible for me, and it's fun, it's challenging, it's engaging, it's extremely difficult. There's a lot of late hours, so it's not for everybody, but at the end of the day, it is for me, right? You have to have kind of both the relationship, the qualitative skills, as well as kind of the technical quantitative skills. And I think that's something I kind of thrive with.
So how did where did you grow up? You grew up in Southern California, right?
I grew up in Southern California, like Long Beach area.
Yeah.
Not sure how familiar you are. Like I went to Mayfair High School in Lakewood, California. So that's where I spent most of my younger years.
Yeah. How did Yale come about? Where were you recruited by? I mean, obviously, you must have been academically well positioned for that. But were you recruited by all the Ivy League schools? Did you have some options to play at?
I was in a very interesting space. So I would say, kind of top 100 recruit.
Yeah.
And at that time, we had a very strong class my senior year. So I wasn't getting recruited by, the blue chip schools like the UCLAs, the Kansases, the Dukes, et cetera. I was recruited by more kind of mid-tier colleges from a basketball perspective. And then on the Ivy side, only Yale from the Ivy League actually recruited me. And come to find out, a lot of the other Ivy Leagues thought I was, too good to go to Ivy League. So, I had this interesting decision. There was a couple of colleges that I really liked. Long Beach State recruited me heavily. Rutgers recruited me heavily. Providence recruited me. But, kind of looking back on it, I'm really happy with the decision I made. And, it was, kind of a testament to my father who passed away a few months ago. He really kind of pushed for me to go to Yale just from the fact that, after everything's kind of said and done, that Yale degree will always kind of be with you. And that opens a lot of doors, and it has opened a lot of doors. So, definitely do not regret the decision to go to Yale.
Yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. It was much more, it was much different than I anticipated going there.
So first, sorry to hear about your father.
Thank you.
And that was great advice. I think one thing, I mean, just going back to my own career and, kind of getting, making decisions on where I was going to go play sports coming out of high school. I don't think I had the wherewithal to really understand how important the university side of it and the academic side of it was to what you were going to do later in life. And now as an adult, and I'm sure obviously yourself, like, Yale means a lot. It really does. And not just, what you, I'm sure, learned at just the high level and caliber of education, the name, but the network. I know, from talking to other people who have come from, the Harvards, Yales, Princetons of the world. I mean, it's like, I'm sure you have classmates, people you knew that have gone on and are, congressmen and senators and CEOs of other companies, right? I mean, I would assume.
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, I could start, naming off names, but, I'll save that for another conversation.
Yeah, you don't need to do that. So tell me about that experience. You said it was amazing. Was there a little culture shock coming in, or?
Well, born and raised here in Southern California, not accustomed to the snow at all. So that was the first culture shock. Secondly, lived with my parents for my whole life. So living on my own, that's the next culture shock. And then you kind of have this idea of Yale of, these, nerds, right? People that overachieve and top of their class and 1,600 SATs, 4.0s, et cetera. So you anticipate there's just a lot of, studying and schoolwork and academics and not as much fun as it was. And I think that kind of lends itself to the adage that, you study hard, you play harder, because a lot of these people played extremely hard. And I was kind of a naive kid, and it took me a while to kind of open up, but some of my greatest experiences happened at Yale, so it was fun, to say the least. I don't know if this is the right platform for a lot of the stories, but
hey man,
I'll just say
don't hold back on good stories here. This is this is an adult show. We don't take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, no, it was a great experience. It was a great experience for a number of reasons.
I get it. We'll talk about these stories over a beer next time we get together.
Oh yes.
So 6'5", 6'6", shooting guard is what the bio says. Led the team in scoring all 4 years. Started every single game that you played in at Yale. So really solid career.
Yeah, it was great. I fortunately had an amazing coach who is still there to this day. And we have a really strong relationship. I think that was one of the catalysts for me going there. But no, and the quality of basketball was great, both at Yale and just the broader Ivy League, conference. I continue to mature. I think kind of my personality lends itself more to be selfless. So while I did have the capabilities to score a lot, I was also, relatively selfless and often played point guard. And that's just kind of my experience playing basketball there. It was a great experience.
So obviously the aspirations to play in the NBA are there. What was that experience like? Your senior year, coming to the end of your career, you've had a really, really solid career. I mean, if you put those numbers up at a UCLA, you're probably a first round draft pick.
Oh yeah.
Tell me about that experience.
Yeah. So, coming up on senior year, clearly the goal is to make the NBA. I tried to, both, my coach and myself, try to position myself for, tryouts and get in front of the right people and camps, et cetera. And at the end of the day, it was just clear that, I wasn't going to be on an NBA team, definitely not right after out of school. And there was the option of going to the D League. But when you compare kind of pay and trajectory of the career, I thought it was best for me to go overseas and try to have a successful career. I didn't think I was kind of a borderline NBA player at that time, which I think the D League is the best for. Like if you're right there on the cuffs, you can get a call up every once in a while. I didn't think I was right there. So, I made the decision to go overseas and, try to have a, successful and lucrative career over in Europe. And fortunately, I was able to, stay healthy enough and be successful enough to do extremely well.
Did you know at that point what you wanted to do professionally? No idea.
No, that's one of the biggest, my whole life, it was all about basketball, right? So, you grow up, I played, AAU ball since I was in fifth grade and played with a lot of NBA players on my team. And, high school, college, the goal was NBA. I mean, I didn't even really think of, an actual job. But then when I made my way over to Europe, I was like, okay, I'm not going to leave Europe, with, $100 million. So I'm going to have to work after I finish playing basketball. I mean, I made quite a bit of money and it was good, but I'm going to have to do something post basketball. But what is it? And, ultimately I just kind of took stock of kind of my assets and things that I'm good at. I feel like I'm a pretty good people person. I am good with numbers and finance. I'm pretty logical, which, I kind of get from my dad. So, it's like, oh, well, why don't I try, wealth management? Why don't I try kind of advising people? And since I was already playing, it was tough for me to kind of get a real job. So there I started, my wealth management firm and, brought on a few clients and,
you were still playing and the wealth management part had come in.
Yeah. You have a lot of free time playing basketball over in Europe.
Yeah.
Often it's 1 or 2 games a week. And then there's, during the week, you may have 3 or 4 practices. And then you don't have school. You don't, it's a completely different dynamic. So you have a lot of free time. I did a lot of traveling, which is great. But, I knew I needed to do something to kind of better my life post basketball. So, started my own RIA. Ended up studying for and passing my C.F.P exam, which was extremely difficult, just so I can have the kind of accreditation and the credibility to advise people and help people. And that was, that was the goal.
It's amazing. So were there, teammates at the time that you were, advising for while you were playing?
Not officially, right?
Mm-hmm.
Coming from Yale, everybody kind of just naturally assumes you're a nerd and you know everything. So I would often get asked for advice, which kind of sparked the idea of starting a wealth management firm. But I did have buddies that were playing in other countries at the time, which I kind of brought on officially. But I'm always happy and open to give advice, particularly in the finance space. Just, there's a lot of financial mismanagement with athletes. A lot of it is due to just a lack of financial literacy, which clearly isn't taught in schools. And there's a lot of people looking to take advantage of said athletes for the reason that they have a lot of capital and they don't know much about it. So my goal wasn't necessarily to make a bunch of money doing it, but was to get some professional experience and to, legitimately help people out. And at the end of the day, I think I accomplished those two things.
No, absolutely. I talked to, I had a guest on the show, a guy named Don Davey, who played 8-9 years in the NFL, and has gone on and had an amazing post football career. Really, really bright guy. Was a 4-time academic All-American at the University of Wisconsin, and he got his degree in engineering, and just started managing his own money when he was in the NFL. And he was so good at it. And it wasn't like he ever solicited it. It was just people around him could clearly see that he had just such a process about it that they would ask him for help. And, one thing led to the other. And he eventually, started his wealth management company and then a real estate investment firm. And, now he owns, 50 Firehouse sub franchises. He's like their largest.
Nice.
So he's gone on and done a million things, and I think his main business are his different funds that he runs for other people. But it all started really organically of just a guy that took the time to do things right for himself, and then people started to come to him and being like, "Hey, man, I love what you're doing. Come do it for me too." So before we get off of the Europe piece, because I find this part really fascinating. I love Europe. I just the handful of times I've had an opportunity to travel through there and experience different cultures.
What's your favorite city?
Rome.
Okay. Why?
Well, maybe it was just the experience that I personally had in Rome. It was like honeymoon time. I was with my wife, so we were kind of newlyweds, and just like the culture and the people and just the way they go about living and the food. And I just remember sitting, in these different, plazas, drinking wine at night or beer and the street performers. And then you just walk in the streets and you're like, oh, that's a, 1800-year-old church. So it's like that mixture of like the culture, and then you get to go to Vatican City and you get to see the art, and with just such a laid back, cool food, alcohol, drink, fun, enjoy life culture. It just resonated with me.
Yeah. Oh, great. I agree. I enjoyed Rome, but if I were to pick one, it would definitely be Barcelona.
Yeah.
For a lot of the same reasons that you said, it's just the culture, the people, the lifestyle, the kind of staying up late and having dinner late and everybody kind of out in the streets. And, just more of a laid back kind of atmosphere, laid back, open, friendly atmosphere. And then the weather was, or at least when I was there, was absolutely amazing. So,
So where did you play? I mean, where were some of the stops you made along the way?
Okay. So I spent like 5 years in Switzerland in two towns. Both of them are absolutely amazing. One is Lugano, which is not a well-known city, but it's absolutely beautiful. It's near the border of Italy. But I spent maybe 3 years there. And then another one is Freiburg, which is kind of near the capital. It's about 30 minutes from Bern. It's kind of right on the border of the French and Swiss-German region. And for a small town, which is what it really is, they have some of the best food that I've had, incredibly. And I also played in France, in the south of France, kind of near Marseille.
Yeah.
And then I played in Hungary. I played half the year in Budapest and the other half in Szombathely. Wow. Which is another beautiful town. And I spent a little time in Liège, Belgium. Amazing. It's like you hit the lottery on like the cities that you got to play in.
I'm assuming
Had a
there's
little
not
too
a
much
lot
fun
of,
sometimes.
yeah, too much fun sometimes. I bet. When you were there, were you living there full time, or did you maintain a residence in the U.S. and travel back and forth?
So your contract is typically from, I would say, August to June, depending on how far you go in the playoffs. Sometimes they give you a week or two around the holidays to go home. Sometimes they don't. And then, so I'd be there from, say August to June, and then I'd go home and, probably stay with my dad or rent a room for a month or two. Then I'll be back out there. So I was primarily out in Europe. And yeah, tried to pick up a few foreign languages.
Yeah,
Couldn't pick up Hungarian. The only thing I know is Egészségedre, which is cheers.
Yeah, there you go. That's all you need.
That's all you need.
Yeah. I don't know a whole lot about the EuroLeague. Is it like soccer, football out there where you got like your kind of your Premier League and you different levels? Like, were you playing at the highest level of European basketball, or how's that structured?
So it's similar to how soccer is out there. Each country has its own league. So Switzerland has its league, Hungary has its league, and then there is kind of a league that brings in the best teams from the best countries. It's called EuroLeague. And then there's a second league below that brings in, I guess, second best teams from the countries. And it's called I don't know what it's called now. At the time, it was called the Euro Cup. And then there's also a third kind of league, which again brings in the best, or the third best, I would say. So primarily I played in country, right? So when I was playing in Switzerland, I was playing for Freiburg, and then they would play other cities in Switzerland. I think 1 year I played in a kind of an international competition, and we traveled to Russia, and we traveled to Estonia and Portugal, and it was great. But primarily I was kind of country based.
Do all the countries have their own style of basketball? I know that's one of the things you hear about, like, right? Like the Spaniards play a certain way, the Eastern Europeans play a different way. Like, did you see it out there? Could you tell it when you were out there?
What I would say is, European basketball is starkly different from American basketball. Mm-hmm. When I was playing out here, it's kind of more up place, faster, athleticism. And in Switzerland, particularly, it was kind of more cerebral. It was slow down. It was, leverage the play, not necessarily leverage individual talent. Or maybe that was just kind of the coaches that I was playing with. But yeah, there's definitely a stark difference between American and European style baskeball.
Do you still hoop? Do you still get out and do any kind of like men's league stuff?
I need to. I haven't been out in a while. It's tough because, it would be great to find a league that I can play in, occasionally. But I don't want it to be too good, and also don't want it to be too poor. Right. So trying to find that sweet balance is tough. And then of course COVID didn't really help things. So
yeah,
I'm still on the look. I'm on the lookout.
So, all right. So let's talk about the transition out. Played a number of years out there. How did you know it was time? Did you make the decision, or did the league make the decision for you?
No, I was fortunate that, I wasn't injured. And I had opportunities to go back and continue to play. And I decided, it was a number of reasons. How old was I? 35-ish, I believe. I had just gotten married. And I knew that I needed to begin kind of the second part of my life sooner rather than later. There's a lot of athletes that play out there and they just play until the wheels fall off. And at which point it's a little difficult to, make that transition. So I made the conscious decision to, come back home and try to transition into, the next phase of my career, whatever that may be.
So investment banking is one of those roles that a lot of people want to get into. Obviously very lucrative, very interesting, dynamic. typical path, you go to a really good undergrad, you come out, you might do something for a couple of years, and then you end up at, like a Harvard or whatever it is and get your MBA. And then, from there, you get recruited by somebody and you start in the business and you kind of move from there. You're a 35-year-old guy. Now, granted, Yale background, obviously, smart dude, just can tell by talking to you. But, pretty late in your career to get into investment banking. Like, talk to me about how you were able to make that happen. Because I think that's something a lot of people wish or would love to be able to do. Very few people are actually able to do it.
Well, I would say that my goal wasn't particularly to get into investment banking. I wanted to get into sports and finance and business. Mm-hmm. So I was looking in a lot of different areas, whether it's on the team side, whether it's on the consulting side, whether it's at a sports brand, but I wanted to have those elements in my job. So I did kind of a search here in California for things that encompass all those elements, and came across Park Lane. And what I would say, there's the traditional path to investment banking where you kind of go bulge bracket and you do all the work. And I had the option of going that route. I understand the lifestyle isn't overly conducive to a family man. And at that time, I had 3 kids when I was getting my MBA. So I needed something a little more, I wouldn't say easier, just more flexibility, where you can pick and choose when you needed to work hard, and sometimes you didn't need to, right? So kind of what I think helped me, and this is what I tell a lot of, MBAs that ask me for advice and getting into kind of the sports space, is, relationships are key. Being able to reach out and have a conversation with somebody and have that individual walk away saying, oh, I like that guy or I like that gal. And then always kind of being in the position to add value in some way, shape, or form. People want those type of people on their team, right? People that are smart and can add value and that they like, right? All throughout getting my MBA, they always talk about the airport test, right? If you are, I was doing some consulting stuff and, they were saying, well, when you're in consulting, you're always traveling around. So if you're with the MD at the airport for 4 hours, will they walk away saying, oh, I like that guy or that gal? So you always kind of want to be able to position yourself. To me, it was way more qualitative than quantitative. Like I had the technical skill set, but just being able to, walk in a room and be able to engage and have that sense of confidence and also have that, somewhat sense of kind of charisma to be able to be likable, and kind of working on that. I mean, I think that's what, ultimately helped me get to, get an internship and then, a full-time job at Park Lane. So, always, my advice is always, develop those relationships with people, particularly in the sports. Sports is a small space. And you don't know where opportunities will present itself, but just be ready.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great advice. Projecting a little bit, you're 35 years old, 34, 35 years old, whatever it is, when you're done playing basketball, you come back, you're just getting married. I'm sure you've made a little bit of money along the way, but you decide to go back and get an MBA.
Yep.
You probably hadn't spent a ton of time modeling out, finance stuff during your time in the MBAs, the European League. So I'm assuming as a later stage MBA, that's kind of going back. You're probably dealing with a lot of people that are, 26, 27 years old. But, you said about the technical piece, like the quantitative side of it, like that wasn't something you had. You had to relearn that, right?
I mean, yeah, that's one of the main reasons why I went to business school. I had to learn it, but I can learn things. That's, learning how to, put together a financial model. That's just, X's and O's. It's, something that you can learn to do. And it's not overly difficult if you apply yourself. But, being able to be in a room and adjust your personality or adjust your topic or whatever to better fit somebody that you're speaking to, you can't really teach that in a class.
That's right.
So, the technical side of things, and I enjoy a lot of the financial modeling work and valuations and stuff like that.
Sure.
So that helps a lot. And clearly that was important, and I use that on a regular basis at Park Lane. But that kind of relationship component is, in my opinion, one of the more important aspects.
100%. I couldn't agree more. And I'm familiar with the airport test, right?
Yeah.
That old, like, if I was stuck with this guy for 4 hours, it really comes down to, like, could I stand being stuck with this guy in an airport for 4 hours? I think that's maybe the slightly, negative way to look at it, but there's some truth to that.
It's a much lower bar just to be able to stand somebody as opposed to like somebody.
So what's the day in the life of Edwin Draughan like? Give me a rundown.
Full day in the life, not even focusing primarily on work, but just day to life during a regular weekday. Mind you, I'm married and I have 3 kids, a 5-year-old twin girls and a 4-year-old son. So I'll give you the full experience of me on a day to day.
All right.
It generally requires me waking up around 5, for whatever reason. Oftentimes my kids wake up early, but if not, either I try to get an early workout in or some sort of early meditation, breathe work or something, some alone time. Because after that, I would say around 5:36, that's when the kids pop up.
Sorry, not to interrupt. What kind of working out do you do?
Oh, so I do a lot of, when I am able to get to the gym, I do a lot of like resistance training. I've been really getting into, and this may be a divergence, but I'm really into kind of fasting and keto diet.
Sure.
And one of the kind of components to kind of accelerate a lot of the kind of cellular regeneration is by pushing your muscles to the point of, where you can't go anymore, right? And that's how you kind of get over the hump. I can kind of talk about that for a while, but, that's one of the components of fasting. It's kind of after you kind of starve your body, not actually starve, but deprive your body of some nutrients.
Yeah.
It starts to recycle its cells. And one way to kind of accelerate that is by pushing yourself beyond what you're capable of doing. So, you go to the point of failure. So I do, I'm only in there for like 45 minutes, and I also hop in the sauna when I can get in there. Just to kind of accelerate that.
Is it like weights, like barbell type stuff, dumbbell stuff? Okay, great.
Yeah, so I'll do traditional like bench press, squats, deadlifts, curls, working on certain body parts, but I always do to failure. And I usually do like 3 or 4 exercises, and I'm in and I'm out. Okay, so where was I? Oh, the day in the life.
Day in the life. By the way, I want to get back to it. Yeah, we were pretty early in your day. We were at about like 5:30 when you get done doing your workouts. Working out to failure is brutal. It's really hard. Like mentally, you have to be very mentally tough to be willing to push yourself to the point of failure because, just from doing it myself and anybody out there listening who's ever lifted weights, like you get to about 80% of failure and you're like, okay, I'm about ready to stop. I don't want to do this anymore. And then to take however many reps, depending on the weight you're using to get to that point of failure, it's not pleasant.
No, I mean, I think the other component of that is not just necessarily like physical exertion and physical development, but it's more mental as well, right? If you're able to kind of push past your limits, in the bench press, you can push past your limits in anything. And it's just kind of repetition in training. So if you're able to do that, you can kind of carry that over to work or to family or whatever other component in your life you want to apply that to. So mostly everything I do is both kind of physical and mental. I'm really kind of cautious of kind of mental well-being and improving that as much as possible. But yeah. So getting back to the day in the life of Edwin, usually around 6 or so, I'm with the kids, helping them out and getting them ready. And then around 7:30, they're off My wife takes them to school, and then I am typically going through, sports business articles and just kind of seeing kind of what's happened in the past, 12 hours. So I'm usually doing that for about 30, 45 minutes. And then I get into emails, and then I get into kind of whatever needs to be done for the day. For example, Park Lane, we typically dedicate Wednesdays where we don't schedule any meetings, and we focus on kind of building our network. So it's business development. It's, reaching out to people you haven't reached out to for, interviews, trying to get new clients, whatever, it is kind of, but from a network development perspective. So, after I get off of this call, I have a few calls I need to make, and then a few outreaches that I need to make. And this is all about network building, because, as an investment banker, you need to have a strong network. Otherwise, you're not going to get any deals. You're not going to get any deals closed. And every day is different. If we're in the middle of a deal, there's often a lot of either, outreach to prospective buyers or investors. Might be some financial modeling work, maybe needs to develop a deck, reviewing that. I manage a group of interns, so there's, that component. Almost any and everything that, an investment banker does. That's why I try to keep that from, 7 to, I would say, 5.
Yeah.
And then at which point I typically have to go pick up the kids, and then I hang out with them for a little bit. And then I'm kind of back, wrapping up the day from a business perspective, I would say around 7:30, 8. And I try to be in bed by 9:30, 10.
Yeah, man. Keep them busy. I like it.
Yeah, got to. Keeps you young.
Living that clean life.
I'm trying to, man. It's not as easy, and trust me, it's not all, roses and cupcakes. And, I try to enjoy myself. Both my wife and I try to enjoy ourselves when we can. It's just during the week, it's usually just, you got to get stuff done. So you got to get it done.
What excites you right now? When you think professionally out there in the world and, different things that are happening. I mean, of course, you're always going to have your, owners selling this to this person and people wanting to invest and buy a piece of this. But, just as far as emergence, I know Park Lane's done a lot of stuff in e-gaming in the past. It seems like, because I follow Park Lane a little bit, obviously, with my relationships over there. And, Andrew, the founder, seems to be a guy that's always got his thumb on the pulse of what's happening and is not afraid to move quickly as market industry changes. What are you seeing out there that's exciting?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits of working at a smaller firm is that, we're flexible and we're adaptable. We can change relatively quick. So that's one of the benefits, or that's one of the main catalysts for me coming over to Park Lane. But from a market perspective, there's a lot of exciting things. I deal a lot with sports team owners, and kind of the valuation of stuff. There is, what I consider now is kind of a relatively, I won't say a perfect storm, but is very conducive to be a buyer's market in sports, right? You're seeing a lot of people either invest in or acquire sports teams. And, that's a function of a few things. One, private equity historically has not been able to acquire sports teams here in the U.S. Now, more recently, a couple of years ago, 4 of the 5 major sports leagues are allowed to have private equity ownership in some capacity. And 2, I think COVID has, from a kind of a macro perspective, has created extra wealth amongst kind of the upper tier. So a lot of people have extra wealth, and sports teams are kind of the ultimate kind of trophy asset. And then additionally, kind of COVID is also not so much here in the U.S., but at least in Europe, has caused some financial issues and caused a few fire sales and, some discounts that weren't previously there. So with all that being said, there's a lot of opportunities in sports teams, and there's a lot of opportunities for individuals who own one or two sports teams to continue to kind of grow their portfolio of sports teams. We're starting to see a lot of people expand just beyond one sports team and really creating kind of synergistic effects by bringing in multiple sports teams and then probably coupling that with a stadium or an arena, or coupling that with a sports-based company that operates that can expand beyond their sports teams. And I know that that's probably not as exciting as like some of the kind of the buzzwords that are going out there, like metaverse and NFTs and what have you not. But for me, this stuff is really exciting. It's more kind of tangible. And not to say that, we're not monitoring kind of the crypto and NFT and blockchain and metaverse type stuff. But, I feel like that's just that's a very common response. Like, oh yeah, Facebook changed its name to Meta. I'm like, oh, okay. But I still need to kind of do a little more diligence on that front.
Yeah. Yeah. The sports team thing, I find sort of interesting. And I mean, you obviously know much more about it myself. I think it's easy for, I think, and maybe I thought this at one point, there's an owner of a team, right? Like you had the Dallas Cowboys, you got Jerry Jones as the owner, and that's factual. But a lot of teams have minority owners, right?
Yep.
I mean, there's it's like a cap table of owners on a lot of these different teams. So a lot of these transactions aren't necessarily, Jerry, and I don't know, Jerry Jones was saying he might own 100% of the Cowboys. You could tell me that, but it's not just like Jerry Jones selling the Cowboys. There could be some minority owner selling a stake to somebody else who wants to become a minority owner, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%. We've at Park Lane taken quite a few meetings with individuals looking to ultimately, own a team kind of in full, but as an interim step, get their feet wet by becoming a minority owner, so that they get better accustomed to kind of how it takes to run a team, get familiar with the other owners, understand kind of how that specific team operates. So there's a lot of kind of nuance behind team ownership. And at the end of the day, there's, a limited number of teams. But yeah, I think Park Lane, one thing that we do extremely well, and we have done quite a bit throughout our history, is, helping people buy and sell those minority interests. Because, at the end of the day, 10% of a $4 billion company is pretty lucrative, right? And it's a lot more than just, putting it up on some website saying, oh, I'm selling my 10% share. There's a lot more kind of work that goes into developing the process to ensure that, you're not only you're getting the highest price, but you're selling it to somebody who's going to be accepted by the league. That's just, and I'm kind of smiling a lot because this kind of stuff does kind of get me excited.
Kind of jazzes you up. Yeah, man.
A little bit.
It's so like Elon Musk, right? Or, whoever,
Yep.
Jeff Bezos, somebody's worth $100 billion, right? I mean, in theory, they can go out there and buy any team.
In theory,
but they can't, right? Like that's the strange part about this.
That's what makes sports teams so valuable, is that regardless of how much money you have, you still have to be accepted by the rest of the owners. So, for example, it's public knowledge that, the Denver Broncos are up for sale. That team will probably fetch, $4 billion, right? So I'm sure there's a handful of people that can financially pay that. And I'm sure there's quite a few people who want to own an NFL team because they don't come up for sale very often. But at the end of the day, you can be, Jeff Bezos and say, yeah, I want to buy this team if, what is it, 8 or 7 other NFL owners don't want you to buy it and they vote no, then you can't get it. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you just go and give all the owners an extra $1 billion.
Bribe them or whatever. Yeah.
Which, that's a possibility. But I think that's what makes, sports team ownership so valuable. That's why a lot of these people don't sell it, because it's tough to get in.
Like when you think about that, I mean, and I don't want to put you in an uncomfortable situation of, crossing any lines or relationships, but like, what are they looking for? Like what, obviously the don't be an asshole thing. Like, I mean, you don't want somebody that's going to come into the league and, probably like a Jeff Bezos or something like that. It's just like too much negative publicity and just, who wants to deal with that? But
just to be clear, I'm not saying that Jeff Bezos.
No, I know that.
Is not liked.
I'm just giving an example of like,
okay.
I would assume that if a guy like Bezos, and I could be completely off base here. Neither of us have any knowledge of this, but if a guy like Bezos did decide to come in, I could see at least 8 owners just being like, dude, I know this guy's got all the money in the world and he can buy anything he wants, but we just don't want to deal with him. Like he just brings, it's like he's a distraction to the rest of the NBA, NFL. Maybe not. Yeah. Maybe that's not the truth, but I could at least think how that could occur. What do you think NFL owners are looking for when they think of an ideal owner coming in?
I'm just speculating.
Yeah, of course.
If I was an NFL owner, my primary objective would be bringing somebody in that's accretive to the league. Right. Somebody that adds something outside of, a lot of money to buy a team, right? If you look at the NBA, they've had a bit of turnover over the past few years. And, some of their more recent owners, adds an extra element to NBA as a whole. Former Yale, Joe Tsai, recently acquired the Brooklyn Nets. He has, the business background. He has clearly roots in China. There's, some elements that I'm pretty sure were, attractive in having him as a team owner. So I think that whole component is probably key. And then there's probably also some personal, some personal components that also come into play. For example, if an owner just had a bad experience with somebody, I could see them saying, I'm just going to vote no just because I don't like this guy. I'll refrain from giving examples, but I think, that's, again, you are one of 30 or 32 people and you earn that vote and you'll use that vote. You don't want to bring in a bad seed to your group, this closed group that owns the actual league. So they're very meticulous, background checks, interviews, etc. And you just want somebody that will, in my opinion, will be accretive to the league.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, famously, at least my understanding was that the NFL denied Trump from buying a team, years and years and years and years ago. And he still holds that grudge, supposedly.
There are a lot of reports stating such. Yeah.
So do you, I don't know if you tap into the individual athlete. One of the things that fascinates me a little bit, and, just from our days as college athletes, is this new name, image, likeness, rules that are starting to come about where, you're seeing college and even in some cases, like Mikey Williams, like high school kids that are signing, $1 million, endorsement deals and looking at, all these different ways to kind of monetize themselves and their fame and their social followings, et cetera. I don't know. What are your thoughts there?
I think it's past due for collegiate athletes to be able to somewhat monetize themselves. Mm-hmm. I'm not entirely sure how well these rules were rolled out. I still think there needs to be some structure and oversight. But I'm all for, collegiate athletes being able to benefit off of the work that they do. Because, the college landscape, has been doing that for a while. And now, a lot of these kids haven't had the opportunity, and even post college career may not have that opportunity to monetize their names, right? Because only so many kids go on to play professionally. My concern is if it's not regulated or it's not structured well enough. And, there's always been some level of, corruption in collegiate sports, but, hopefully it just doesn't go overboard, I would say.
What haven't we covered that, if we got off the phone together here and I was like, hey man, did I miss anything? Just kind of where the conversation went. You're like, man, you should have asked me about this because that's really interesting.
I don't know. I think you touched upon everything. I'm trying to think. No, I think you covered everything.
You mentioned you spend your mornings, first thing is kind of coming up to speed on what's going on in the industry. Who do you follow? Like who's like the kind of the people out there, the thought leaders that you're like, man, this guy's got a real pulse on things. He's interesting. I want to hear what he has to say.
I typically follow like publications. So
Okay.
There's a few that focus primarily on sports business. Sportico is one, and Sports Business Journal, Sports Business, Front Office Sports. And then there are kind of a handful of people I follow on Twitter that, is consistently pumping kind of news items out, and that I try to at least engage with to some degree, and trying to get a little better at Twitter. Still haven't gotten the grasp of being consistent on there. The biggest thing about Twitter is just kind of removing, negativity from your timeline. So I'm still in the process of kind of focusing on things that I want to focus on and removing everybody else. So, but yeah, I would say it's primarily those publications and a few others.
Anybody out there wants to get in touch or learn more about you, where should they go?
I guess we can, email address. You can kind of post that, with the clip, or you can go to parklane.com. Oh, it's PRKLN.com.
Yeah.
And then, I don't know, my Twitter handle is just my first name, last name.
Okay. I'll put this all
or
on
LinkedIn, I guess.
I'll put this all in the show notes. So
Yeah.
people will be able to find you. Awesome, man. Well, I'm glad we were finally able to make this happen. It was good
Likewise.
to talk, and I appreciate you sharing your story and your background.
Yeah, happy to be on, and I appreciate you inviting me.